My name is Jackie Lewis, and I'm Vice Chancellor for Advancement here at Mizzou. And I'm pleased to be here this morning with University of Missouri President Moon Choi and the Dean of our School of Law, Larissa Lidsky, to recognize a very special supporter of Mizzou. Today's guest of honor is a remarkable lawyer and a champion for public interest and civil rights. Steve Hanlon graduated from Mizzou Law in 1966 and then began practicing with his father in St. Louis. After several years in this role, and as Executive Vice President and General Counsel of a joint venture subsidiary of Marathon Oil Company, he moved to Florida and opened his civil practice. In 1989, he formed the community services team at the international firm Holland & Knight, building it into the largest full-time private practice pro bono department in the country before retiring from the firm in 2012. During his career, Steve represented numerous individuals in housing, employment, and HIV/AIDS discrimination cases, winning landmark judgments for his plaintiffs. He's won numerous awards and served as a chair of several statewide and national organizations and councils, including with the American Bar Association. But Steve's done anything but sit on the sidelines since his 2012 retirement from Holland & Knight. He's been an advocate for indigent defense reform and the rights of public defenders both here in Missouri and nationwide for 20+ years. The New York Times even went so far as to call him, quote, one of the leading voices in public interest law for decades, resulting in expert appearances on 60 Minutes and PBS NewsHour. We're incredibly honored that Steve chose this to put his passion for a quality constitutional law education into practice right here at Mizzou. So for today's announcement, I'd like to turn the floor over to University of Missouri President Moon Choi. President Choi.
Thank you. Thank you very much for joining us. And as you heard from Vice Chancellor Lewis, Steve has had an incredible career. And he is the first to say that his career was defined by the outstanding education that he received at the university, but also, in particular, the insights that he gained from our faculty members that instilled in him the value and the embrace of academic freedom and the freedom of speech. Those two are so important for our democracy now more than ever. But he also believed, through the education that he received from Professor Murphy, that universities should be the marketplaces of the best ideas, where durable ideas, theories can be discussed and debated. And I'm so proud to say that this university believes in that goal. In 2018, we changed our mission statement to include the embrace of academic freedom and the freedom of expression. And that is going to be key for not only our law students, but students throughout the university, whether they're studying biology or studying constitutional democracy. So Steve, thank you, and Fran, thank you so much for believing in us, and also for recognizing an outstanding faculty. I believe each one of us can point to someone in our educational journey that made a difference. And for you, that was Professor Murphy. For me, it was Professor Fred Dreyer. And I'm also happy to say that Professor Fred Dreyer is here to also celebrate with us today the important legacy of Professor Murphy. So thank you once again, and I know that our students are going to be incredibly motivated to study the very important topic of constitutional democracy and constitutional law. So with that, let me now turn it over to our outstanding Dean of Law, Larissa Lidsky. Dean Lidsky.
Thank you, President Choi. I am so excited to be here today to say thank you to Steve Hanlon and Fran, and also to Professor Murphy, because the Hanlon's gift is going to change lives as Professor Murphy's gift in the classroom changed Steve's life. And so it's a really exciting day for Mizzou Law. Throughout my time, first as a law student, then as a teacher, and now as an administrator, it has been really clear to me that dedicated faculty change lives. I saw it, my parents were school teachers, I saw it in my household growing up. It's what I wanted to do, and I know as a student, I can't pay back the people who changed my life, including by changing my life by giving me a scholarship so I could pursue my dreams at the age of 25 of becoming a law professor. But I can pay it forward, and I'm so grateful to Stephen and Fran for paying it forward today to change the lives of students for generations to come. Professor Murphy was one of those people who dedicated himself to his students and to changing their lives, including Steve's life. And we're so grateful today that his son is here to celebrate with us. And I'm looking forward to our lunch so that Mr. Murphy can tell us stories of his father and what it was like to grow up in the William Murphy household. And I'm sorry that his brother and his mom couldn't be here, but I know this video is going to go to them. And I just want to say, I'm sorry you can't be with us today, but we are going to celebrate the life of Professor Murphy and tell stories and cherish his memory. Often as lawyers, we are called upon to push back against the prevailing wisdom and the prevailing culture and the things that everyone takes for granted as right. And we are called upon to do the unpopular thing and to be unpopular in the service of justice. And what makes me so proud is that Professor Murphy set an example for his students in that regard. He stood up for civil rights at a time and in a place where that was not the popular thing to do. He stood for justice. He stood for racial justice, economic justice, social justice, and he, as we like to say in law school, fought the man. And so we honor him today for the difference he made for many, many students in setting such a fine moral exemplar. And we need professors like Professor Murphy today. So Professor Murphy changed lives, Steve's life in particular, and Steve has made a career out of changing the lives of others through his amazing work to support public defenders who were overburdened with excessive caseloads where it's very hard for them to see justice done for their clients. And he continues to do that work in his retirement. That is his dream, that is his passion. And I'm glad we get to honor Steve for the work he has done today as well. I will tell you, my acquaintance with Steve began before I ever heard of him, because one of the things he did while a lawyer in Florida is he got a compensation scheme for victims of a racial massacre in a little town about an hour from Gainesville, Florida, called Rosewood. It was an African-American community, and there was a massacre there. And my husband is a lawyer. He represented one of the victims of the Rosewood massacre. And Steve had an effect on my life and our life, even before I had ever heard of him, through his work and advocacy. Now, I'm glad to say Steve is able to pay forward the influence that Professor Murphy had on him with this wonderful gift. And we often pride ourselves at Mizzou Law on what an affordable education we provide, and we're one of the top 25 schools in the country for student debt burden upon graduation. But even that debt burden that we have is a burden that changes students' career paths and may make them take jobs that are not their passion, but that pay well. And so this gift will enable students, like some of the students who are in the audience today. A student here with us is Jessica Escalante. Jessica, can you wave? She's going to dedicate her career to public service, and we're so, so proud of her. But this gift will enable students like Jessica to pursue their dreams by giving them the scholarships that mean they don't come out with any debt at all. So Steve's wonderful gift will also allow our justice system to live up to its highest ideals. The rule of law has been under threat. in recent years. And it is very important that lawyers dedicate themselves to preserving the rule of law, to defending the judicial system. I'm very glad today we have a former judge on the Missouri Supreme Court, Laura Stith, and I can't speak for her, but I know she knows how important it is to defend the rule of law and the justice system, and this gift will allow our students to do that and to honor Professor Murphy and to honor Steve going forward. I have probably talked enough. It is time now to hear from the man himself, Steve Hanlon, and I just want to end with saying how grateful I am personally. This is why I became a dean. A student told me, I said, I'm not sure I want to be a dean. You know, I feel like I touch students, it changed their lives with my mentoring one-on-one. And he said to me, don't you think you can change more lives as a dean? And so it really is thanks to a student that I even considered the prospect and ultimately decided to do this work. And so I am eager to hear from Steve about what he wants his gift to do going forward and what his dreams are for the students who will receive this wonderful scholarship.
Got to adjust my hearing aid. Good afternoon. Thank you, President Choi, Vice Chancellor Lewis, and Dean Lidsky, and everyone else involved in making today possible. A few preliminaries before I begin my prepared remarks. I want to recognize my wife, Fran. She put me through law school. We got married in my second year down here. She had a real cool 64 Chevy Nova 2 convertible. The word retirement was mentioned a couple of times, and people ask me a lot of times, are you going to retire? And I tell them that if I were working, I would really seriously consider retirement. But I haven't worked a day in the last 30 years. I've been very, I call myself the luckiest lawyer I know. So, I feel so privileged to be here today to provide some background and some context to the creation and purpose of the Professor William P. Murphy Scholarship Fund. In my view, we live in a time and under circumstances when it is particularly appropriate to remember and honor great men like William Murphy. I took Professor Murphy's class in constitutional law in the fall of 1964, in the midst of the civil rights movement. Neither I nor any of my classmates has ever forgotten that class. Professor Murphy never used a single note when teaching his constitutional law class, but his vast knowledge of the subject matter, as well as his strong views and values, were apparent to every student. He had all of the manners of the Southern gentleman that he truly was. He had fair written all over his face. Many years later, I was asked to do a lecture at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill at the law school. about my own career, and I mentioned, as I always do when giving such a lecture, how much Professor Murphy had influenced my decision to become a civil rights lawyer. A hush came over the room. I asked why. Unbeknownst to me then, Professor Murphy had moved on to that wonderful law school after departing Mizzou. He had, so to speak, shaken the dust from his sandals and gone on to a storied career at Chapel Hill. Professor Murphy was not at the law school in Chapel Hill that day, but I contacted him afterwards and arranged to have lunch with him and his wife when they were next in DC, where I was working as the pro bono partner for Holland and Knight. We traded war stories about both of our respective careers that had occurred since the time he taught me at Mizzou in 1964. And at the end of the lunch, we stood up, and he grabbed me by the shoulders, and he said, "I am so proud of you," and he hugged me. And it was a moment that I will never forget. Professor Murphy infused me with the values needed to understand and preserve constitutional democracy. Lessons I have used throughout my career down to the present day. The three major themes of the Warren Court: egalitarianism, liberalism, and activism rang out in his classroom as we followed the intellectual battles that were waged between Justice Frankfurter and his followers on the court on the one hand, and Justice Black and Douglas and Brennan for the liberal five-member majority on the other hand, with the Chief Justice miraculously producing several important unanimous decisions, including Brown versus Board and Gideon versus Wainwright. But Professor Murphy was as fair to Frankfurter as he was to Brennan, even when he did not agree with Frankfurter. It took me a while to begin my career as a civil rights lawyer, a career that continues to bring me great joy. I began practicing law in St. Louis in 1968 with my father, John F. Hanlon, truly a lawyer's lawyer. And then I did a stint in a business venture before I eventually wound up at Bay Area Legal Services in Tampa, Florida. We were poor, but we were happy. I would soon go on to spend, or a little later on, would spend 23 years as the pro bono partner at Holland and Knight, where we had the largest private practice pro bono department of any private firm in the nation. And I have had the good fortune to work with many of the great civil rights lawyers of our age across the country. In 2012, I left Holland and Knight to devote myself exclusively to the task of reforming our nation's criminal legal system by first reforming our nation's public defenders system. I did not know Judge Stith was going to be here today, and I'm not going to pass the opportunity up, okay? And she's retired now, so I can say what I want to say. She wrote a remarkable opinion in Waters versus State. We won that case 4-3 after about an hour and a half oral argument, where she saved me at one point when I was in big trouble. We're taking that case across the nation, and it's going to change not only America's public defense system, it's going to change America's criminal legal system. And I can't thank you enough. It's a remarkable opinion. If you would like to know more about my work, you can go to my website at lawyerhanlon.com. I finally found a way to get my name in the firm. Professor Murphy was a legend at 3 different law schools during his decades of service, and a genuine hero in the annals of academic freedom. He was dismissed from the University of Mississippi in 1962 for teaching that Brown versus Board was the law of the land, and that the Southern theory of interposition was nonsense. Similarly, in 1971, he exited the University of Missouri, not by his choice, after brokering a peace agreement between the students and the administration right here in this building, as they occupied this building. That was during the protests, at the height of the protests of the Vietnam War. The danger of violence at that time was extraordinary. At all times, Professor Murphy demonstrated great courage, incredible intellectual honesty, and fundamental fairness. He was a stunningly great teacher who totally engaged every one of his students. Now, for all of you law students out there, and those of you who may be thinking of going to law school, there is an important lesson to be learned from William P. Murphy's life. The most important thing you need to know about a lawyer is not their LSAT score or their class rank number. And it is certainly not how much money they make. It is whether you will have the courage to say no when your client wants you to say yes. It is for you to have the courage to do the ethical thing when the ethical thing is not the profitable thing. And most importantly, it is for you to have the courage to speak truth to power. That's what I learned from Bill Murphy. That's the most important lesson anybody ever taught me. I'm enormously grateful to the law school for giving me this opportunity to speak about Professor Murphy's time at the law school, so that the whole world can see what a truly great and gifted man he was, and how he acted with such grace under pressure. I wanted the opportunity to honor him for his contributions to the university and to our profession while he was alive. Unfortunately, he died before I could arrange that, but I'm glad we are acknowledging his legacy both today and in the future through this scholarship. The William P. Murphy Scholarship will give preference to students pursuing elective courses in constitutional law, to underrepresented minority students, and to students who can demonstrate a commitment to public service. During my career, I've reflected numerous times on the law school and the lessons that I learned here. One that occurs to me time and again is Justice Brandis's observation to Justice Frankfurter in 1921, when he said about his own views about the First Amendment, "I have never been quite happy about my concurrence in the Debs and Schenck cases. I had not thought the issues of freedom of speech out. I had thought at the subject, but not through it. I'm hopeful that this scholarship will produce future public service lawyers who will learn that lesson, who will not just think at the issues that confront them, but will think through them. That's how I believe this scholarship will best honor Professor Murphy's legacy. And today, I look forward to a brighter future for our profession, for the people we represent, and for the arguments we make on their behalf. Some of them, I hope, formulated and pursued by the law students this scholarship will benefit. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you for coming.
So again, Steve, we can't express our gratitude enough for this incredible $1 million gift to the University of Missouri. Your commitment to current and future School of Law students is truly remarkable, as is your admiration for Professor Murphy. And we would also like to thank and recognize Professor Murphy's son, Robert, who is here with us today. Robert, would you stand for a quick moment of applause, please? Thank you. We're so grateful for philanthropic support of our partners who are committed to making our shared goals a reality, as well as a chance to get together and celebrate important milestones like this. And speaking of celebrations, we do have refreshments at the back of the room and invite you to stick around and enjoy one another. And that will conclude today's announcement. Thanks all for being here.